Hello, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 147 of FinalBossTV, your WoW endgame rating show. My name's Adam K.K. Bay. I'll be your host for this adventure into the Legion's Retribution Paladin, the Remembrance of Blessing of Might Concordance, the prayer group for Divine Steed, whatever you want to talk about, the Resurgence of Execution Sentence, whatever. Chat will just fill it with whatever they want to talk about. We'll talk about the current state of Retribution Paladins today and quell some things and bring up some other key issues and points and problems that may or may not be happening out there in the world of Warcraft. But, of course, real quick, a shout out to everyone that's supporting the show over on Patreon and keeping it going for all this time. If you want more podcasts, those exist. There's basically double the podcasts now. They're the Patreon BTS, the sort of behind-the-scenes meet-and-greet podcast put together. So my two guests and I sat down last night and talked for almost an hour about stuff and things. We're up to 20 of these so far. You can follow along on the show notes if you'd like. And of course, the BTS podcasts continue on and on and on and on and on. So if you want to go check those out, you totally can. And of course, the assistant producers of the show, thank you very much for your continued support. So Ludovicus, Troffles, Taislin, R4, Dalthier, Quen, and recently Vrez, thank you very much for your generosity. Making sure I can keep talking to nerds about nerdy things. That's enough for me, though. Let's go over here real quick. We have two guests on the show. One of them knows how the YouTube life goes. Thete, welcome to the show, sir. Hello.
Hiya, how you all doing?
You answer the masses in your fan mail questions and stuff like that. How did that go? How's the YouTube life treating you?
Keeping busy. I don't like to be one to sort of put my feet up, and it certainly doesn't allow you to do that. So yeah, it's pretty good, and I shall be able to do even more because I'm a teacher. So summer's coming up, get even more time then.
Oh gosh, so you teach in real life, and then you teach all of these ridiculous kids on the internet too, huh?
Ridiculous kids, nonsense. Only intelligent, discerning people play this.
Wow. Okay. Fair enough. And then joining us today is Bran. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Now, I mean, your guild name is Big Dumb Guild. So do you?
That is correct.
Do you
We are. Yeah, we're pretty dumb. That's us. That is our motto.
Yeah.
Dum-dums.
I thought Thete just said that those aren't the people that play Ret, though. So.
Oh, that's okay. We're making our own road.
Oh. Okay. That seems fair enough to me. Seems fair enough to me. But I guess back around the corner here real quick, because you're both brand new to the show, I'll just go back over to Bran real quick. What do you do in the Ret corner of World of Warcraft? Like, what are you up to? What do you take part in? What do people know you from, etc.? Plug some stuff. Go for it.
I stream all our progression over on the stream there, and I hang out in the Discord basically every day, chatting with people there, hanging out, answering questions, that sort of thing. That's about it.
But do you know what you're doing?
I'd like to think so.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fair. I don't know. Thete, can you corroborate? Does he know what he's doing by chance?
Oh, absolutely. Of course. We were watching him stream, weren't we, when he was racing on that first day of Mythic Tim with Sargeras?
Yeah. Big Dumb Guild took a few world firsts in the opening push there. And now what are you guys doing right now? You're stuck back on the new Mistress Sasveen after she was changed, right?
Oh yeah, the classic buff the bus. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah.
Right after like 24 guilds kill it, and then they totally change how you can then redo it. So that's reprogression. Perfect. Perfect. And Thete, what about you, sir? What do you do in the Paladin or Retribution little corner of the world? I kind of brought it up already, but go for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Plug the things. Plug the things.
I prepare guides. I mean, I do a few things on my YouTube channel, but specifically for Rets, I do like video guides to complement the guides that say Fardian does on Icy Veins and Rebdul on Wowhead and Skeletor and Thordros do on their own sort of websites as well. So it's like the video guide there. which is useful for some ways because you can show people what you're sort of talking about. Less useful in other ways because as soon as you bring the video out, Blizzard change something the next day and then you look stupid. There you go.
What are you talking? That doesn't happen at all. It's just like if I just made I'm doing discussion videos now myself, and they've been received with varying degrees so far, but I just made a video about mythic rating, and it's so funny that as I was going to post that video, other hotfixes came out. The hotfixes to Avatar came out like the same day. So it just continues. I guess we just have to deal with it. That's just that's just how it is, exactly. I guess.
It is, yeah.
Yep. That seems fair. But any other Thete, throw out some shout outs there real quick, but on the resource side or anything else that you guys want to make sure you give a little bit of accolades to or nods to who helps out in the formulation of the whole shebang?
I mean, we have a really collaborative Ret community, really, especially on Discord. So obviously, as we described there, Sol Sacra is our grand patriarch there. Mezzarano, who also does a lot of work on Simcraft. Fardian, Skeletor, Thordros, Rebdol doing the guides and stuff, and all the Templars, including Branderps there, who were there to sort of all show us the way and help other people. So, you know, people can go on the Ret Discord and get plenty of help. It's lovingly named Hammer of Wrath in memoriam of friends long gone or just recently gone.
Right. Yeah. Anyone you want to give shout outs to, Bran?
Not really. He's got them all covered. We're good.
Okay.
It's basically everybody. It's all just a big team effort, really.
Are the Templars, the way that Thete put it, makes me think of that those are the guys that are the guinea pigs, basically. So you guys go out and you test and see that's what I do in the Enhanced Shaman community. Like I am no Rusa, I'm no Word Up, I'm no Purge. So I just go out there and try to see what works. Then I get told what is wrong or what is right. So are you in a similar boat?
Yeah, similar to that. Well, the ones who are always active in chat, generally the people who know, the people you look to when you have like the questions, really.
Seems fair.
Yeah.
Alrighty. And yeah, we'll see what that keeps going on. It's almost like a blessing and a curse with the way that we exist now with Discord and how interconnected all the classes and specs can be now, which didn't exist really before Legion, right? Discord didn't exist in previous expansions. There were some forums and there were some Google documents and there were some little areas, some forum posts, some websites, but really that wasn't anywhere near as much. I mean, Hammer of Wrath right now, how many guys do you have in there? I mean, let me go see. Hammer of Wrath currently has... It
went down last week or something, didn't it? Because there's too many.
Really?
Yeah, we had to purge people because the server kept crashing and going down.
We had to chase out some heathens.
Yeah, you're almost at 25,000 people right now. That's wild. I've heard a few of the WoW Discords having to talk to Discord directly and get a larger server because they ran out of room. So there's caps, and you guys have apparently been one of the ones that hit it. That's wild.
I mean, the great thing about it is, like, before you discuss things on forums, some people might have the odd website, but with the Discord, you can have, you know, people in the community sort of take control of it, really. So although it lacks some of the structure of a forum potentially, we've got your Ret FAQ section, so people can go to a place and it's all very well organized to get the information they need, and then you've actually got people on hand to be able to answer questions as well. You know, it gets mildly annoying if people ask a question that's immediately answered in the Ret FAQ. But if you check that out first, and it's not a huge long list either, it is really well organized, and people are always happy to sort of discuss the finer points after that.
I've noticed that has been a slow-moving trend in Discord, that now instead of having, like, pins, which there are things in the pins, is that you just have the FAQ channel that no one can talk in, and they try to make it just, like, one solid page, so that you're always just, like, just check that channel, like the read first channel. Yeah.
Yeah, the pins are for memes.
well, that's also where we throw up all, like, the latest sims for different things.
Oh, wow. Even MBDTS says don't look at red pins. Oh. Okay. All right. Well, we'll kick it off right off here with sort of recapping and getting up to speed with patch 7.2 and 7.25. I went back and looked in and tried to like figure out what was going on, and you got new legendaries. Of course, everyone got the new traits in 7.2, but in 7.2.5, which the patch we're sitting in now, and what we've seen is that you got the 3.5% flat damage increase. Insert memes here, right, in these brackets here. And then Divine Hammer damage was reduced by 25%. And then that's, I don't know, that's about it.
Yeah, that's all we got. Not very much. Not very interesting compared to what other classes got.
Mm-hmm. Is that, obviously, I think the ripple was felt throughout the community that was not enough or not the right choice?
All that was about was stopping us using Divine Hammer for single target. Like, before, you know, single target, Divine Hammer is clearly a cleaving AoE ability. You shouldn't use it for single target. And if it was pure single target, sure, you would use Blade of Wrath. But if so much as a herd of gophers came across the fight just once, you might as well use Divine Hammer because you lost almost nothing for pure single target. And if there was any cleave at all, it was better. So it was all about making it sort of have that decision of, is there enough cleave in this fight that I take Divine Hammer, or in actual fact, should I focus on single target, in which case Blade of Wrath is a much more sensible talent, the talent we should be taking for that. Virtue's Blade is the talent we take when we've completely lost our senses. I'm sure there'll be more about that later.
Well, and you bring up Blade of Wrath, and for those who don't know the talents or whatever, like I'll throw it up on screen here. This was changed. And it's just, so now your Blade of Wrath, which approximately 4 RPPM, your auto attacks have a chance to reach the cooldown of Blade of Justice. But it used to be half of the regular cooldown of Blade of Justice, and he gave you that nice scaling attack power dot, essentially. And that was removed really early on in Legion. Was it too good? Too set and forget? Like, what? Why did that? Because the new one is just kind of like, you get an extra reset on Blade of Justice here and there.
People like their procs. I think, you know, where it was maybe as well is the Blade of Wrath potentially more suitable for reducing downtime. With Ret Paladins, you don't want a lot of downtime. It's all about, you know, hitting something all the time. So if anyone makes you move out of melee for even a few seconds, we're steaming. Happens. And I think that's where they were trying to go. We didn't get a lot of discussion from Blizzard about the philosophy between those two particular ones. But as you say, in the end, it turned into a proc-based talent, which, you know, people are quite happy with, I think. And Virtue's Blade sort of got left behind.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they can't, we know, and on this show as we continue forward and all of the testing I've done in the past, and you see the evolution of stuff, and pending on the horizon right now, we have 7.3 already on the PTR. And Feral Druids are confirmed to have a pretty massive, almost Shadow Priest-esque, and even technically in the same vein, like Enhancement Shaman-esque, like, fix across many different things. And I guess that just brings me, do you feel like Blizzard is just stumped on Retribution right now?
I think from what they were saying in the Ret AMA, that they see Crusade as being our chief problem. They said, the actual numbers, they said they see talents like that should be giving us a DPS throughput increase of 5 to 8%. Crusade, they were saying, is much more like 15+%. So it's too much. So they want to fix it. The problem is, like, you can it used to be 3.5% damage and haste with each stack, and then they reduced it to 3. You could sort of think to yourself, well, surely you just reduce it a little bit more. They sort of tried that in the Legion Alpha Beta, and it ended up being worse than useless. Like, better to have no talent at all than to take this thing. So it's not an easy fix. And obviously Blizzard aren't saying anything at the moment, so this is just guesswork based on what they did say on the AMA. But I'm getting the strong impression that they see our fix as being, as they said, by nerfing Crusade, and significantly, they said, goodness knows what that means, increasing the rest of our abilities, buffing the rest of our abilities. And it's maybe just a very difficult problem that they want to make sure they've got right before they bring it out or even say anything. That's just my view.
Yeah, Bran, do you feel that there's anything that needs, like, outside of Crusade, is there anything else that needs, like, direct attention? I mean, because you're obviously not, are you holding Big Dumb Guild back in all your progression so far in the 2 weeks because you're a Ret Paladin? Like, you know, what is the...
I wouldn't say I'm holding anything back. I mean, I am doing a lot less compared to most other classes, but I mean, there are no really strict DPS checks, so not really. But at the very least, it would have been nice to hear that they are doing something rather than just them just saying that they recognize there's a problem. So at least we have something to go towards, and that we will be having some sort of solution in the future.
Okay. Yeah, like the talent attention is the weird thing to me, because I mean, not every class gets the Shadow Priest or the Feral Druid, or I mean, I had 2 talents changed. That's really all I had changed recently. So because I was in this boat that I was essentially playing the exact same spec, the one that worked out the best based on jarring awkward talent since launch. And has Ret been in that similar state as well? I'll go back to you on this again, Brand. Have you been playing the same spec since you launched the game?
Essentially, yeah. Hasn't really changed all that too much.
And that's a weird, I don't know, is that a problem though, to play and have very little variation? That sort of defeats the purpose of why even have talents at that point, just have everything baked in baseline.
Yeah, it definitely keeps things a lot fresher if things are changing periodically between tiers. That way it keeps, like, you're always learning new things and trying new things and, like, you know, playing with all your different talents and builds with the new tiers and swapping out legendaries and that sort of thing, but that didn't really happen.
So then that all leads up to the, I'm going to bring out the air quotes here real quick. Ready? Here we go. The dead spec argument. And I want to just kind of like toss this out there. I'm sure chat will chime in a way, but what is this happens like every patch cycle or every hotfix cycle or every new raid we've had so far. I mean, we've technically had, you know, we're on our 4th raid essentially, right? Nightmare to TOV to Nighthold and now to Tomb of Sargeras. Even though if technically all 3 of those first ones were Legion tier 1 or tier 0 then tier 1. But is this just a rotating carousel of who's next up, or is there some actual, you know, credence to this?
Well, I think people have been saying Ret's a dead spec for as long as they've been saying WoW's a dead game, and it's still going on 10 years after that started. There are things we can do well. We can live and do lots of burst damage to key priority adds, things like that. Doesn't show on the overall damage necessarily. So that's always in there, and I think we've always been quite good at that. But at the moment, like Brand just said, that, you know, we could at least do with something from Blizzard, at least saying what they identify as a problem, what they're working on. And I don't want them to sort of say, oh yeah, it'll be fixed in the next 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later it doesn't come. I feel that they should wait until it is definitely done. But you sort of feel that this is not surely how they're intending it to be. It's not as disastrous as some people will say. I'm not pulling bits of ceiling out of my hair, but something does need doing, really. Right. Because we have one spec. I mean, you come back to the talents. We're like monks, we're like priests, you know, demon hunters, I suppose. Now we have one DPS spec. So really, talents should be the way that we are. You know, we use this talent to be good on this type of fight, and then we switch to these talents to be good on this type of fight, and so on. In a way that a pure DPS class can switch specs, and that doesn't seem to be the case much, apart from, as I say, between Blade of Wrath and Divine Hammer for single target cleave AoE. That's basically our choice.
I mean, and there's some way you can't always go too deep down this rabbit hole, because then you always ask people, and then the devil's advocate side of this is like, well, what would you change to make it all better? And then if any of your changes ever go into the game, then all of a sudden like, oh no, it's bad, blah, and then you get the same sort of feedback that Blizzard gets all this time too. But the whole point of the new talent system they brought in MOP that we're sitting in right now is you were supposed to have something to deal with different situations. And there's a little bit of that, but it still feels like for the most part you're just playing the same way on everything, which is how the game used to be before the new talent system. So
there's a strong element of that. Yeah, it's like you are pretty much doing the same thing, and it's like, oh, another target's popped up, I will use Divine Storm instead of Templar's Verdict. Yeah.
Sure. I think the argument though is that it all really, a lot of it comes down to just numbers at the end of the day. I mean, because chat brings up Holy Wrath, and we'll go into Holy Wrath later, so don't get ahead of us. But I want to go to the 7.2 artifact traits first. So we'll pop these up on screen real quick, because these are the new things, right? And that we we have it so far. It's not confirmed anyway, but we do have we don't have any new artifact stuff coming, and in 7.3 all we're getting is more artifact knowledge, so we'll just get 1 rank a week. So we're not getting anything else to grind for, except, you know, just putting more points in concordance to the Legion Fall, I guess, which is super exciting, whatever. But, so y'all got the Righteous Verdict. You also have your Judge Unworthy, and then your Blessing of the Ashbringer, which this tooltip is a little broken. I just noticed that. This tooltip on WoWDB says 2,000% strength, which is...
That would have been nice. That might have put Red in a nice spot.
Yeah, exactly. It's 4%. It was 2,000 flat strength.
That's right, yeah.
4% strength when you have your 2 greater blessings out. So, I don't know. Bran, you want to walk me through like the impact of any of these if Judge Unworthy actually really does a whole lot? Because this technically used to be a talent you had with AoE Mass Judgment back in the beta.
Well,
that didn't make it.
It's still a talent we have where the Judgment hits extra targets, but then Judge Unworthy is really nice because it'll spread it all the time, which basically completely removes that talent from the game. So it's just a dead spot. You never pick it because Judge Unworthy does the same thing, and it's in your weapon. And Blessing of the Ashbringer was a really nice boost to strength when it first came out, but then they made it a scaling stat, which is going to be nice later in the expansion, but for now, it's not quite doing the same thing it used to. And Righteous Verdict is just a nice chunk of damage.
So I guess, so bringing that up then, so you couldn't, because Greater Judgment has the tagline where it always crits above targets above 50% health, but that's not enough to combine the two then? Like Greater Judgment and the Judge Unworthy Dragon don't work well together?
Because Mastery isn't that great for us, the critting, it wouldn't be hitting that hard anyway. So yeah, it's not great. It's a dead talent.
And why would you need Judgment to judge more targets if it's just going to spread to more anyway? That's the main problem.
Judge Unworthy and Greater Judgment is nuts in PvP. Not a PvP show, so I don't know. I mean, if that's the case.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, the other thing with Greater Judgment, maybe they're alluding to, because I'm not a PvP player anyway, is, you know, it's going to do more damage against something with higher health. It's like a reverse execute. But for PvE, the main advantage was supposed to be for AoE, so you can have that Judgment on multiple targets, which means that your Divine Storm is going to do more damage against those targets.
Fair enough. Okay. Used to be good with old Lawbringer. Now Lawbringer is trash. Oh no. Yeah, I don't know. The combination of PvE talent, because they're your baseline build, plus the fact that you get PvP talents on top of that, and how some of the PvP talents will be better suited to be in PvE and vice versa. Like, why is Lightning Shield in the PvE tree for enhancement? Why? What? So there's a couple of those back and forth. Again, we'll talk about Holy Wrath later. Just so, but those look fine then, I guess, overall. No big complaints with your new traits?
No, they're all pretty nice. Very handy.
Okay. There was something that went with, so Righteous Verdict reads, your holy power spending abilities will increase the damage. Side note, they need to have like an actual, they should have a name for holy power spending abilities. Because sounds kind of anti-video gamey or very video gamey, whatever you look at it. But so they increase the damage of your next Blade of Justice by a large percentage, or your next Divine Hammer by a large percentage. Isn't that almost the exact same thing as you have on like your tier 20 bonus coming in soon? That comes to mind right now. Isn't it?
Tier 21?
The tier 20, when you judge, it buffs the damage on your Blade of Justice, sure.
Yeah. Judgment also increases the damage of Blade of Justice by 20%. So, is there a back and forth on that where you would?
Well, I think it's just a lack of imagination sometimes.
Oh. Well,
you know, it can't be easy to come up with lots of different interesting things without breaking the spec, I suppose. I'd rather boring and works than imaginative and Holy Wrath.
No, that's keeps coming up. Can't get away from it. So then I guess that brings up the we talked about Crusade a little bit, but let's broaden the topic a bit right now, right? Because here we'll get into it. So the power reliance and the pigeonholed nature of this talent, right? So Crusade. And I'll bring up the Ashbringer trait as well here, because your whole argument you have down here is you have Crusade versus Divine Purpose versus Holy Wrath. And all I put in the notes is WTF Holy Wrath. So, and is Crusade too much of a steroid? Because I want to look at the actual numbers here. Where is the number? Baseline, is it on the talent calculator here? Because Avenging Wrath, I can't find it. Where is it?
Yeah, Crusade is the talent that replaces Avenging Wrath, so anything to do with Avenging Wrath is same for Crusade.
Right. Yeah, but it's so Avenging Wrath is a flat 35% damage and healing for 20 seconds.
Yeah.
But Crusade reads that increase all your damage and haste by 3% for 20 seconds. Each holy power spent during Crusade increases the damage and haste by additional 3% up to 15 stacks. So that's 45% damage and haste at max stacks, which is very easy to reach, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is the... I don't know, Thete, you want to break down like the math behind this talent and why?
Well, what happens is Crusade straight away is more powerful than Avenging Wrath, otherwise why would you take it? Right. But then you add into that, you've got traits Wrath of the Ashbringer on our Ashbringer, which can extend the duration by 2.5 seconds per point. So we get 4 points we put on that now with a full Ashbringer. So that's an extra 10 seconds to make it 30 seconds. Fine. Which also means, because there's that lead up to it, it takes a certain amount of time to build up our 15 stacks, but it only takes the same amount of time to get those 15 stacks, regardless of however many traits we've got. So you're massively increasing the proportion of time at which you're at full stacks. And then you add into that some legendaries, such as the Chain of Thrain, which is largely considered our Abyss legendary, which straight up increases the damage done during that period as well. So all of these things add up to make it extremely powerful.
Yeah,
as I say, like Blizzard said, they want a talent like this to increase our damage by 5 to 8%. It does it by like double that.
Yeah, Chain gives you an additional 10, which that was nerfed. It was 20%, was it not? It
was, yeah, it was indeed 20, yeah.
Yeah.
Before I got it.
Oh, but I guess the counter argument that comes up a lot here, oh, there are the notes, is that should Crusade just be baseline for Ret? Like, should Ret get Crusade as that choice? And then, of course, Holy and Prot just get Avenging Wrath. Because when something becomes so integral and so important, they've rolled some of those things in baseline. Like, that's what Shadow Priest and Frostmage just had, you know? So
yeah, it would solve the problem that otherwise you just have dead talents either side of it.
Sure.
It solves that problem. So it is one solution. It's not the only solution, but it is one obvious solution. It's certainly an easy solution, except you'd have to think of another talent to put in that level 100 row. Especially now we have Soul of the High Lord, the legendary ring, because that gives us divine purpose. So if they replaced it with another talent that no one wants to take, it's like, well, I might as well. And a level 100, I don't know what you think, should probably be in a row where there's interesting choices, because it's like your last row of talents, isn't it? So it should probably have something game-changing.
They would have to put 2 talents, because they can't keep Holy Wrath the way it is. There's no way.
Right.
But it would give us a little bit more options, because it would free up that 100 row, because you can't pick anything other than Crusade. It's just too good.
Right. Yeah, that's just that. I don't like getting too in the mud on the show and just talking about and being really negative or naysay about kind of stuff, because we don't know all the inner workings behind the scenes. But there are certain talents they've created that have become, again, they're so pivotal to how a spec just functions and exists, that if they just nerf it, then it would feel bad. But if that was just the baseline of that spec, then that would just help out and breathe that whole thing, maybe. So, but yeah, Holy Wrath, I mean, We'll talk about right. So this is a 3-minute cooldown. All right, 3-minute cooldown. It deals 200% of your missing health in holy damage to 4 nearby enemies. Only 120% of your up to 120% of your maximum health, because if you can get more health from shaman or whatever, and then 35.
Flask.
Yeah, the flask. Yep. If you, I mean, and then it deals 35% of your max health against enemy players. So this is.
It's a nightmare of a talent. For PvP, they've nerfed it to the point of view where I gather, I'm not a PvP player, but I'm told that there's no point in using it for that. For PvE, if it's going to do damage and you're going to take it instead of another powerful thing like Crusade or Divine Purpose, you've got to use it on cooldown. It's there for damage. You ideally use it when there's multiple mobs up as well, because it doesn't split damage. It does that damage to up to 4 targets. So if you just do it against one target, that's a quarter of the potential damage. And of course, it's your missing health, so you have to engineer your near death without actually overdoing it. So the lower you could get your health down, the better. And on the pull, it's like you'd go in, tell the tanks, "Don't worry, guys, I've got this." Get a smack in the mouth, use your holy wrath, right? Taunt it off me, healers, heal me up, and then every 3 minutes you want to do the same sort of thing.
I mean, who knows? Maybe in 2 expansions when we have 8 billion health, it'll actually do a respectable amount of damage.
There's this. We had the Holy Paladin show a little while ago, and we talked about Light of the Martyr and the Paladin, side fantasy about using your health, your body, your whatever to help and save the weak and the purge the unjust, whatever. Because prop paladins are already getting smacked in the face. So holy paladins can use their HP to heal people. So what does Ret get? You don't have Blessing of Sacrifice anymore, which that's a whole other can of worms. And so they go, well, give them a talent that if they get chunkinated, then they can do damage back. But that doesn't work from a rating standpoint. And if it's a PvP sort of thing, which what it feels like, why isn't it a PvP talent? Right? Because you're taking damage in PvP because you're fighting other players and Tauren and Moose and stuff, whatever.
Yeah, we get shouted at if we're standing bad in a raid.
Well, yeah, of course. So, and this also brings me back to, this was a very different talent in beta. Didn't do the whole channeled holy damage, filling up your holy power bar kind of thing, and that was scrapped. But even that would probably be better than this.
I mean, anything would be better than this. But going back to the standing on bad, you have to do that for Shield of Vengeance anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that is the other thing. Do you know what? I mean, Shield of Vengeance, of course, that's the defensive where it's an absorb shield. But if you can consume the whole shield, then it deals damage. And you have to wonder and what Blizzard said about this when in the AMA, they said, oh, well, it has to do damage because the name suggests it's Shield of Vengeance. It's like, well, who came up with the name? And I think, do they just have to, does someone bring round a hat? Celestalon brings round a hat, pick 2 things out, and you go, oh, Shield. Oh, that's a defensive. Okay. Vengeance. Well, that's an offensive ability. Oh, an absorb shield that blows up. And I think it must be the same guy who did Holy Wrath. He went, Holy Wrath blows up. I sort of feel if a person like that exists, the anti-terrorism agent should be involved, because it just seems like the same sort of thinking.
Yeah. And that to complement that whole thing with Shield of Vengeance is they removed your divine protection.
Which and a damage reduction is I think, more useful.
Right.
I mean, I would rather a damage. In fact, in the past, if you think about it, we have our bubble. It's an iconic thing. People say, oh, well, you can just immune things. We can immune less and less. There's been times in the past when people can solo soak something with a damage reduction that we can't with an immunity. Right. Because immunities are considered too powerful. So.
Well, that's the side of the whole. Icy Veins made that post about it with Method Exorcist, and one of my tweets got featured because I don't know if I coined it, but I've definitely been calling it this for a while now, ever since I looked at the Dungeon Journal a while ago, that it's the Tomb of Sargeras. And 8 of 9 bosses have soak mechanics, and it's so fun. You bring up shield, you bring up immunities, right? And they've made certain things you can't even immune them anymore. Like you can't bubble the incorporeal shot on sisters because you'll kill your raid group, right? And you can't even immunity the Hydra shot because it'll still hurt the crap. It'll probably just kill you too. You have to split the damage. So they're trying to stop immunities from being a thing. But that was one of the...
But that's the sort of thing that should come up in raid testing too, and like internal stuff. Not after people have killed it on live.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little silly.
These mechanics have existed in raids for years. They know that if you have something that could be solo soaked, people will solo soak it. So why have they made the decision after it came out?
Right.
Why wasn't that an obvious thing to think about months ago?
Yeah. And again, they made so many of these mechanics. And that's why all these top guilds you see, they were just running hunters, mages, and rogues. Right? Because that's just... You have to. Right? But... Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Divine Purpose, or Divine Shield should be back. Or Divine Protection, rather. Divine Shield you already have, but Divine Shield is not. Can't use it on everything. Yeah, you guys should have little damage reduction back, because having this like it's 2,000% attack power, which is ridiculous, but it's still a powered shield. And that's really not an actual DR. So, and then I think, Bran, you brought this up. Eye for an Eye is only a physical damage reduction. So
yeah, so it only works in very, very select fights.
Right. Yep.
Which is not very useful at all.
Oh, I didn't bring this up to tail end on this topic in the Crusade thing. How many relics are worth as many eye levels as a Wrath of the Ashbringer relic?
It's generally worth at least 10. Generally, it sort of depends on some things. Obviously, if you've got Chain of Thrain, that increases the value a bit.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I've had for a little while now 3 relics that all buff it. So I've had 37.5 seconds on Crusade until recently, and then I had a Holy Relic that was just like 25 item levels higher. So obviously, or 20 item levels higher. So I've replaced it now. But yeah, it varies a little bit, and it depends on, obviously if you've got something with a garbage trait on it, like reduces your Blessing of Protection cooldown, then you can regard that as well. You can especially now regard it as worthless because you can't even use it on sisters.
Right. Yep.
But even compared to another good one like increases Blade of Justice damage, it's still probably worth about 10.
Yeah, chat has whole different numbers. Rings is worth 22 plus. Its Wrath is worth 26, 23. You're saying at least 10?
Yeah, it depends what you're comparing to. It
okay.
Depends what you compare it to.
Yeah, sure. I think my from no relic to best relic is maybe 2 to 3. Maybe. I mean, there's obviously been a huge inconsistent balancing problem with relics. This is one of the interesting theory crafty problem mathematical sticking points this whole expansion so far. But I love hearing about that, I finally replaced my Wrath of the Ashbringer relic that was 875 with a 905 relic. I was like, excuse me? Like, what? You're replacing Nighthold relics with like normal Nighthold. You get a good relic and you keep it all the way until now. Like, what? I don't understand. That's such a huge amount. That's just ridiculous. So that could be fixed. Right? That could be something they could fix, but like what are the things that Blizzard could fix or tweak? Like, right off the top of your head, like what are some of the key pins in the wall that they should stick up there and start working on? Brand, do you have anything?
Well, defensives is one of them. Changing up our talent tree would be another. We have the whole mastery problem.
What's the mastery problem? Indulge me.
Where basically it's nowhere close to being really a stat that we ever really want to get. It would need to be buffed by about 40% to be in line with versatility currently. So it's a stat that we try to ignore as best as possible, which is like we were going to have to use it, and it would have been like a nice stat with the previous tier 20 tier, because it was going to make our Blade of Justice benefit from our Mastery and Judgment. But then they removed that just before the raid came out, which squashed that whole idea. So now we're back to this, avoiding Mastery.
Yeah, let me just read here real quick before you go on. So baseline increases only Judgment's damage by 24%, and then it will cause Judgment to increase damage taken from your Holy Power spenders on the targets with Judgment by half of that, so 12% base. So, yeah. I mean, it's always been brought up that it's basically a Colossus Smash window for Ret, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's way less impactful than CS, because CS affects all their damage. And yours, it only affects Judgment by a little bit, and then only your spenders by a little bit.
And now especially, like, we've got Blade of Justice at the point where that's actually rivaling Templar's Verdict, which is supposed to be our big single target smackdown. So, you know, at the same time, there's a lot of mastery on Tim Sargeras gear.
Right.
So they're giving us plenty of mastery, and it's like, it's not quite worth as much as even before. I mean, Sol Saka was playing about with this over the weekend, and he worked out that, let's say you have a haste crit ring, 9-10 item level. Very nice, thank you very much. I'd like one of those. And if you had a haste mastery ring, it would need to be 940 item level to be worth the same. 30, and you know, when Blizzard made the changes to Nex and rings in particular, because there was a big issue at the start of Legion with, you know, huge item level upgrades not actually being an upgrade because of the massive secondary stat budget on them. They sort of said after the fix, you know, 10 item levels should definitely be an upgrade. Well, here we've got a situation where it would need to be 30 item levels. And that's a huge trap for the majority of players who don't have anything to go on other than item level. And like Brand's just said there, all it needs is to increase the amount of mastery we get from a particular amount of mastery rating, and they could bring it in line. It's just that.
They've had a couple issues with that too, because it's I bring up Havoc Demon Hunter, which is my main alt, and so I keep up with it to some degree, right? So I'm not playing it like a complete ignoramus, but they had no care for mastery earlier on, which was, you know, a neat stat, right? It increased all their chaos damage and movement speed, and movement speed's a DPS stat technically, because the faster you can move around from stuff or move away from things is obviously important. But then they had changes to mastery, to not only the scaling, but the prevalence of it with the Chaos Blade 100 talent. So then mastery became all they cared about for a little while, and now most recently, they nerfed the crap out of Chaos Blades, removed the mastery scaling, and lo and behold, mastery is now the weakest stat under their everything else for Havoc. Just like a complete roller coaster of stats. And it's been a different gearing plateau like every raid so far. So, yeah, and Kib's in here. Don't talk about Demon Hunter. Yeah, it's... and like, they keep doing this, right? Blizzard makes the change that then all of a sudden screws up their other change they just made about secondaries to... I don't get it. Not every stat's supposed to be important for every single spec, but yeah, go ahead, Thete.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I guess it's because you have these, like they keep telling us, you have these different teams working on different things. And I guess it's a huge operation to coordinate them all. And you can easily have one group try and fix something, and another group, without you even knowing, is actually setting fire to it.
I hope not. Brand, do you have anything else that you would like fixed or tweaked? So we obviously brought up the mastery stuff.
That's pretty much it. Just, you know, talents, mastery. So I guess the defensive things we talked about just now. Right.
You want to remove Crusade and Divine Purpose and make your level 100 to your only Holy Wrath talents, right? That's what they're going. Yeah. All right. I mean, Thete, do you have anything to add to that? Like,
the only thing I would add, if they wanted, it's not really a wish list, but if they wanted to redesign us around fixing Crusade, I would get rid of the Wrath of the Ashbringer traits, because I see that as a huge problem. I would just get rid of those, have it, you know, it's definitely a 20-second cooldown, work it around that. That's probably going to be a whole lot easier to balance it, if they intend to balance it as a talent. Of course, if we're going to change it to baseline, then that won't really do anything. You won't need that.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that's probably been the biggest point of contention, I would say. So it's just everything revolving around the talent and that trait. Because if it becomes too good, then it becomes too mandatory, and you balance the whole spec around it. And Blizzard's been trying to move that around. And if you read the 7.3 stuff for Feral Druid, that's their entire intention, is to move things out of their forced quote unquote 3 ability snapshot window. Like, you have to use this, and this with your rips and your rakes. We talked about it on the Feral Druid show. That there's a problem there, and they are adjusting it. We'll see if that is everything they need to. I haven't talked to any Feral Druids that think it's a good thing, but I would assume, hopefully, it is. So we'll see.
Well, I believe, I might be wrong on this, but I believe Blizzard said that artifact weapons won't be around in the next expansion.
Yeah.
So I think that the traits won't be a problem then.
Yeah,
so
that's like a year and a half from now, though.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully just they do something in between now and then. But I mean, what they was saying with having the traits gone would be a good point for them. I mean, we could see something then, but that is, as you say, a bit far from now.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, Steely Boys just saying in their chat they'd need to buff us massively to compensate both that and your suggested removal of Retribution passive. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. I don't mind getting rid of those things that have been buffed massively and everything else.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Bran.
Oh, no, I'm just agreeing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in the same... The Retribution passive itself, whereas flavorful and interesting, is also, and as I probably put in my beta testing notes back in the day, very gameable in some regards. Like, you actually can, and it leads to awkward and somewhat toxic gameplay. And that leads me right into the Greater Blessings debacle, and the, I would say rest in peace, Greater Blessing of Might, but we saw this coming.
Yeah.
We saw it come a long time ago. I mean, the other big problem with the Greater Blessing of Might was that back in February, they said how they intended it to work, which is how it went live, but it wasn't working like that in the alpha. So you had people, I mean, like Preach, for example, did a Retribution Paladin guide where he talked about the way it was playing in the game, but he wasn't aware of what Blizzard had said was their intention. So people thought it sounded like a great idea. And then the realization came in that we were going to be dependent for 10% of our damage on 3 people who might die on the pull, which might be fine for the Retribution passive for a little bit.
Right.
And it was over. It was finished. And it was a huge nightmare, an absolute nightmare, because if you're in, let's say you're in a guild where you are the top damage dealer as a Ret, you're not going to get very much from it because you're not there by definition. The people you're putting it on are not doing as much damage as you are. Whereas if you're in a guild where you're like middle or dare I say at the bottom, you're going to be getting a huge buff from it because you just put it on your 3 arcane mages or something, or shadow priests. Early Legion, you'd put it on 3. If you had 3 shadow priests in your guild, fantastic.
Yep. I remember, I could probably dig back into my giant, pages of beta testing notes that I made back a year ago. And I'm pretty sure I put a lengthy discussion in that when I set my feedback about how Greater Blessing of Might was going to be incredibly toxic and detrimental to the game space, because it's one of those buffs, and they've tried this before with Dark Intent, with the Amplify Magic thing all the way back in the day, like all these little like only give to one person sort of deals, and it's always gonna be better on certain specs, which devalues its use on so many others, which just means that you're running like a popularity contest or like a math contest. Well, you don't do as much damage this patch than this class, so they get the extra buff to do more. So you snooze, you lose. Like, that doesn't feel good to ever have those sort of things in a raiding environment. It's just not healthy. So it's gone, and now you can only put 1 Wisdom and 1 Kings. But now it's funny because they buffed the 2 of them. The buff to Kings is whatever, but they buffed Wisdom, so now it's always like Wisdom is so good on progression for your healers. So I mean, Brad, do you feel that? Do you move your Wisdom around at all in raids, or is it on like your most throughputty healer? Like, how does Wisdom factor in this now too? Because that's now becoming somewhat of a problem now too.
Oh, well, I have our Resto Shaman. He likes to pay me for my wisdom, so it never moves. So I have an unlimited supply of Old Wars, and it's great.
Well,
so I don't mind it too much, personally.
Case in point. It's just... Well, Wisdom bots attack. I don't... Give it to whichever healer pays the most.
Yep, that's what you do.
Yep. I don't...
And then Kings is just negligible.
Yeah,
it just
no one
goes
cares.
wherever.
If Kings drops off, like sometimes I'll put it on someone else. Like by default, I'll just probably stick it on the tank, and then if someone is like, let's say, a rogue soaking souls on Gul'dan or something like that, you put it on them. If you move it from one person to another, no one cares. No one says anything.
No.
If wisdom drops off, then someone says something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the healer, I know the healers have a bind, or they have a macro they send it to our Ret Paladin to move it mid-fight or something like that. It's like it's a really important thing, which it's great to have those powerful feels in that regard. But then when it becomes something that is almost like a linchpin to keep that class bringing to a raid, I don't know. I mean, in the current set of things, you just bring hunters and rogues to raids. Who cares? Who needs wisdom in that regard? They can just soak everything and need everything, and then they're fine. But
yeah.
And then that brings up the Blessing of Sacrifice, which I believe, I would imagine both of you sort of missed, because that was, those were good, meaningful moments.
Well,
like
I've missed everything we've lost. We lost Devotion Aura, I missed that. And then they took our Blessing of Sacrifice. And, you know, I don't know what we're going to lose next expansion.
Hopefully it's Retribution, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I won't miss that.
Right. So we'll have to wait and see, because all you have is Freedom and Bop now, right? For your
yeah.
Yeah. But the other Paladins have all three. Okay.
Well, that is the other thing. We don't have anything that neither of the other specs have. That is probably crucial. We don't have any Retribution specific.
You have Retribution though.
We do have Retribution.
Retribution should just be a PvP talent passive, though. It would work in that sense, right? Like you help avenge your fallen, heroes around you on your side. But again,
people keep saying that, but I mean, I see it as like, if you're going to become enraged because you've seen your fallen, first of all, that's warrior, warrior class fantasy. But even if you're going to say paladin, it's totally wrong. We're happy when it happens. If it happens while our wings is up and we're on full stacks, we're delirious. That's not the emotion a paladin's supposed to have. We're not supposed to be happy when our allies fall. Terralion was furious when Lothar fell. I mean, he's supposed to be, him and Uther are supposed to be our, archetypes. Neither of those, really were remembered for being delighted when their own men were dying.
Right. That's true. Well, there's conviction and, the whole avenging wrath kind of deal that, you strike down my allies and my friends, I'll strike you down too. I guess there's kind of a flip side to that, but I think in the realm that it is right now, then yeah, it is. If your holy priest can brick it and come back to life with the shield, or the cloak rather, and that procs Retribution is for a damage buff, because that's.
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, there is one time when we're annoyed, and that's if someone dies more than 40 yards away from us.
Oh yeah.
Because then we don't get it. Yeah, that's annoying. That.
The hunters like to do that a lot.
Oh, marksman, like right outside the 40-yard range. It has a range though. Like, shouldn't it be? Whatever. There's so many problems with that. So, well, I guess the last little bit to wrap up here before you move on is: are there any major bugs or like bits of tomfoolery happening with Retribution that you want to bring to light, or things to like stay away from for your fellow paladins out there? Anything that comes to mind, either of you? I don't know if you have a list or anything you want to.
Not that I know of, really.
No, I mean, there's a few traps for newer players of things that might seem like a good idea, but I don't think there's any actual bugs with the class anymore. I mean, some people, for example, think if you take Justicar's Vengeance, which is a 5 holy power damage ability, that it'll let you stack your Crusade up a little bit quicker, and is therefore worth doing. It's not really worth doing for that. But
Kib,
it works as well as it's supposed to. Yes, very good, Kib. Thank you.
Yeah, Kib's just the DPS is bugged, obviously. Yep, obviously. So, I mean, there was a weird thing with this. The Arms Fury show we just had, and again, because there is parallels to draw between Arms Warrior and Retribution Paladin, and that must feel, again, they just had a big moving around of things and rebalancing and moving some damage out of the CS window and putting it into the base kit. Like they have this problem, and it's just funny to see that it still continues with Ret. So, yeah. But anyway, anything else to wrap up the first section of the show? Or are we good to move on? Set? All good?
Seems good.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, well, it's time to me to blather on about a few things real quick here in the middle of the show. Again, thank you to those that are supporting the show and keeping it going on Patreon. If you would like to get more podcasts, they exist. They're called the Patreon BTS podcast. I've always sat down with my guests to do meet and greets so that we don't go into the show cold on Sunday. And I've done this now and recorded the last 20 of them. So you can go check those out. They're the Patreon BTS. You can just check right up here. And you can go listen to all of those. They're audio only. They are literally just a podcast. These are available over on Patreon. They're all about an hour or so long. Some a little shorter, some a little longer. If they are the show with Preacher and I have got 2 hours almost of the two of us waxing lyrically about the good and bad and the ugly of Legion. If you want to go check that out there, of course. But those are available to you right on my Patreon page down below. Or if you want to support the show in a more physical manner and keep me going on working with other local artists in our little corner of the world, our little bubble, then you can do that over on our Designed by Humans page. We have a whole bunch of different styles and prints and colors and fabric they're made out of and a whole bunch of things in the works right now. Currently working on 4 designs, I believe, in total. We have 2 that aren't even really WoW related. Then we have an Argus shirt, and of course the Mythic World First shirt. Once that gets all handled soon, just to commemorate the raid race, as it were. It'll be more like the Demon Within shirt. It won't actually have the little chibis on it like we had for the first 3. It'll be like more of a design that stands alone on its own. Of course, you can grab some of these shirts and then take them to BlizzCon and go give him a hug if you want to do that. That's totally fine as well. If you've missed any of the past shows, they are on iTunes and Stitcher and now Google Play Music. You can just look up Final Boss TV or just go to the podcast section of the page if you want to do the audio-only versions of all of the shows. They go back all the way around to like the early 90s shows. They all got started to get transcoded and put online. Or you can go check out the YouTube page, linked down below as well, where they're all organized by the year that they came out. So there's a 2017 season, 2016, 2015, 2014, and 2013. They go all the way back. So you can go all the way back to when I had even worse audio and terrible hair or whatever you want to make fun of. But those are all right there. Or go back and see all the other shows to see what the dev interviews were like when I had those on. Those are all listed on the YouTube page, as well as, of course, all the other side content that I put out. But those are all linked down below or in the video description box. Or if you're on YouTube right now, hello! And thank you very much for the years that we've been doing this and hopefully keep going forward with it. But that's enough out of me. Let's talk about the Mage Tower real quick, and then stats. So you guys had the God Queen's Fury, which is dealing with Sigrid in the Halls of Valor.
That's correct.
And pretty good, pretty easy. Brad, what did you think of the Mage Tower?
It wasn't too bad. It was nice that we got to try to utilize different legendaries and take out different talents that you might not usually take. At the time it came out, you know, Divine Hammer was all the storm, but you kind of had to take Blade of Wrath if you were running with the full Repentance strategy. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of cool to run in there blind and try to figure it out and play around with some stuff. Utilize your Agrimar Stride and Prydes so you don't die and, you know, try to take it down. It was cool.
So
not too challenging.
You gotta put your heart on your sleeve here. How many attempts did it take you to get it down?
Well, funny that when it came out, I didn't have internet, so I went to a internet cafe and I tried there on a really bad computer. I did it maybe like 5 or 6 times and couldn't do it. When I got home, about 3. Okay. So not too bad overall.
Not bad. That's fine. I think I did it on my 5th as well. I mean, when you do it on your main, then obviously it becomes a lot more of like a muscle memory thing. You figure out what you need to do and you just kind of do it. Havoc took me like 15, and then I recently just did Elemental. That took me just under 2 dozen, I feel. I don't play ranged, so I was just like totally out of my element, but I did it. That's kind of fun. Thete, what'd you think of the Mage Tower challenge?
I thought it was good that we had the tools to deal with it, but that you had to think about it, as Brand's just said there, that, you know, you had to sort of use things like, I used the Repentance, where that seemed the most obvious one to me, because, you know, you're working it out for the first time. I was actually in a massive panic because the Mage Tower became active at a time when I had like a 12-hour day at work. I had an evening event and then raid days, the other ones. And I was thinking, and I hadn't saved up many nether shards either. So I was thinking, I've got a certain amount of time to do this. Otherwise I look like a right fool not doing it the first time round. But yeah, we had everything that we needed to deal with it. So, you know, it wasn't as difficult as maybe it has been for some others. Because we're, you know, when you come to solo stuff, Rets are always really good at that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, chat brings up that, you know, wish they were all equal. There are definitely some fundamental differences between them, you know, right? Like doing Havocs versus doing the exact same one as a Frosty K, I believe, is quite different. But I think the biggest thing they should allow us to do, and I don't know why, they talk about all this evergreen content in Legion, and I hope they might do this eventually, is that once you've done it on the actual proper spec and challenge, why can't you do the other challenges for fun? Why can't you do the challenge again? Why can't you do any of the DPS challenges as any DPS? Or, like, because the tank one is all the same, but you can't ever redo it to, like, try different things or, like, get better time or whatever. And it's not, because you can do Chromie over and over and over and over and over again. You can do the Withered Training over and over and over again, but this one is just like one and done. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have to say it should be done again. It is going very much against the idea of Legion, isn't it? That we have this procedurally generated content and we have, you know, always something to do. I don't know why they haven't done that at all. It would have been an obvious thing to do.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Stat time. We've already did a call out to your mastery issue, so we won't really have to drag that across the floor anymore. But what do Retribution Paladins want to prioritize in their secondary stats then? Which I put in here, you know, are there any priorities for gems and enchants, neck enchant? Are there breakpoint or feel good points to shoot for? And the final tagline was, apparently Retribution has like a lazy Susan about their stats. That's you can, if you have a lazy Susan in your kitchen, you know what I'm talking about. But
yeah, it's about that. You basically want to aim for haste and crit and versatility are close behind it, and then just, you know, leave mastery behind. And that's pretty simple that way. You just try to aim for that, and you'll be golden.
Yeah, even the primary stat isn't like way ahead, so it's not like you just go for item level either. It's always worth simming. Sorry, you have to. And but yeah, I mean, if you had to pick one, if you sort of say to someone, look, you know, I don't want to do that, you sort of go with haste and crit. But there is a feel good point with haste, a bit over 30%, and then like, yeah, crit, maybe versatility, and maybe sometimes if you get a bit too much haste, maybe change your enchants around.
Okay.
But all the stats are pretty good. They're pretty close together, except mastery.
Except mastery. Right. Well, that's what I want to make sure. So you said, because that recently came up for enhancement is the same way, is that we thought we only needed like 25% haste, but now it's 35 because of the prevalence of Ascendance or the GCDs you can fit into Earth and Spike. So 30%, you'd want to like suggest that that's sort of the feel-good point for Ret then?
Yeah, I think it's like 31 points something.
31.25 is about where you can get an extra GCD in your judgment window, which is nice, but not required. You can do just fine with just about any amount of haste in like the 20% range.
Okay. It's always really important too, but I'm sure, again, read the stat comments are just sort of to get it out of the way, but check the read first FAQ in the Ret channel in Discord. And then we'll move on to tier bonuses then. We're saying goodbye to tier 19 right now, sort of, for you guys. So
Not yet.
Not yet, yeah. So your 2 pieces, your holy power spending attacks will deal 7% more damage. That was nerfed slightly.
Yeah.
And your 4 pieces, your holy power generating abilities have a 20% chance to generate 1 additional holy power. Just a chance to give you more holy power when you build it. But I put in here with many different characters. So 2 piece, 4 piece, all the pieces. So there's something coming up with. Are you guys actually looking at the shenanigans to keep 2 piece 19 and then run 4 piece 20? I mean, Thete,
Yep, that's what I'm doing.
You are actually doing it right now too, Brand?
Yep. Yes, I am. It is a very nice combination, and then allows you to fit in Liadrins instead of the Whisper's legendary cape, and then it performs really nicely. The Liadrin synergizes really good, with the tier 24 piece. So yeah, feels good.
Is there an eye level disparity that you're wearing on those pieces, Bran, or did you get lucky enough to roll the lottery on them, or?
They're pretty close. I think it was last week I got a few Warforged rolls on the tier, so they're not too far away, but they're still a little bit behind compared to Mythic TOS. So it's not too bad for now, but once like Mythic TOS is on farm, I'll probably have to say goodbye to it.
Okay. That's what I'm always wondering about, that shenanigans with the 2 piece, wearing old tier 2 piece and then wearing new 4, or I think it was like elemental shamans were gonna wear like all old 4 and only new 2 or some nonsense, which they kind of squelched that. I'm not sure. That'll be something they can come up with, but I was always wondering about, because if those 2 slots are like 15 to 20 eye levels behind, is that still okay? Because they tried nerfing the 2 piece sets a little bit, and they did sort of, but not really. So, Thete, you want to expound upon?
Well, I mean, obviously it depends what you've got to replace it with. You know, if you've got, say, a high item level, a couple of crit haste items to put in those slots, then, you know, maybe it'll be worth it at that point. If, however, you've got versatility mastery pieces, then, you know, you can carry on using those for a bucket. So it's like anything else, isn't it? The answer is always just sim it for yourself, because it depends what you're going to replace it with. At the moment, I'm using 2 piece and 4 piece because I don't have anything really amazing to swap in. But, you know, when I do, then inevitably it'll be worth replacing them. And as soon as you replace one, of course, you might as well replace the other, because as soon as it's the set bonus that's keeping them there at the moment.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough to hear, as long as it won't be a thing that actually continues to follow you forward, because as you said, like, strength isn't a huge point for Ret right now, because again, secondary stats versus primary are all out of whack in Legion. So as long as you're not like 2 piece tier 19 in Argus and just holding back 50 to 60 eye level pieces, it's still better. As long as we don't hopefully see that nonsense in the future, I think we'll be okay. We are in a weird transition period, and because we do have 6 piece sets because of legendaries, they gave us 6 pieces now, that we're in a weird sort of situation with tier sets. But this has been an evolving topic for a long time. Because, well, go ahead, Brad.
Oh, just as our eye level just gets higher and higher, because of the new Blessing of the Ashbringer trait giving us 4% strength, it's going to make it better the longer the higher our eye level goes. So it'll sort of raise that stat weight as we keep moving forward.
Okay. All right. And then, yeah, that's what you guys brought up, too. You brought up, so the Adrin's Fury, just to make sure we're on the same page here, is the ring that while Avenging Wrath is active, or Crusade, in this case, you gain 1 holy power every 4 seconds, and the Chain of Thrain, which is the 10% more damage when you're in Crusade. The Healing Dun exists. I don't know, have you guys ever actually utilized the Healing Dun for any reason other than yourself?
Well, to a degree. If it's an AoE fight and you're throwing out Divine Storms, it's benefiting the healing there to a very minor degree.
Fair enough.
But nothing really noticeable.
Okay. Because now you're saying hello to tier 20, which we're sitting right now, the Tomb of Sargeras stuff. So your Radiant Lightbringer armor, your 2 pieces Judgment will also increase the damage of your Divine Hammer or Blade of Justice, depending on which one you have spec'd, by 20% for 8 seconds. And the 4 pieces, the Divine Hammer, Blade of Justice, again, same one, will generate 1 additional holy power. And I put this down here. I thought, because your old 4-piece had a chance, a very small chance to give you holy holy power, but now they just like straight up just gave you on one of your builders flat more holy power. They were just like, here, just take it, which is obviously a lot more consistent than the old one. So how's tier? Go ahead. Yeah, how's tier 20?
I'm going to say especially well, with it being Blade of Justice, which generated 2, now it generates 3. It is a spender, so you're just getting that as a spender, and of course you could end up in a situation really where if you're getting procs on your Blade of Justice, if you're using Blade of Wrath, you could end up with a little bit of a streak sometimes, or if you had the Soul of the High Lord in particular, you could end up with a streak of Divine Storms in AoE or Templar's Verdicts single target as well, to the point where you don't necessarily need to use Crusade Strike as much, which is why we've also shifted towards Zeal from Fires of Justice, which just hits harder, which is surprising for some people, because again, if you look at that, some people think, well, that's got a longer cooldown, am I going to have a lot of downtime? But these set bonuses give us significantly less downtime, really, especially with the extra haste that we're naturally getting as well.
Right. That seems pretty good. Looking at the tier 20, I mean, I've been doing this before, all the different past shows, looking at your tier 20, because before we didn't actually have them in game. Unfortunately, I can't bring up all the different colors because they're all broken and the shoulders go in their heads. But it's a nice looking set though, which is good. Harken back to something old, and before we get something totally brand new coming up here soon. But that looks good. The 4-piece seems down. Yeah, we talked about the Tomfoolery. So anything else that you need to mention about tier 20? Is there anything? Oh, I brought it up earlier, but did the rotation change at all because of your artifact trait plus the tier 20, or nothing noticeable?
No, not really. The only thing that sort of changed is once you hit the 220 4-piece, it allowed you to swap one talent, the Fires of Justice, over to Zeal just for single target. That's the end of that.
Is there... Okay, just because Zeal... Because
it hits harder.
Right.
Yeah. And because you have all the extra holy power from the tier, and Liadrins if you're using it, you don't need that extra holy power saving.
Okay. That's fair. So you traded off the cooldown reduction on Crusader Strike, giving you a 50% chance to reduce the cost of the next damaging healing holy power ability. Well, damage or healing, right? That was the Fires of Justice was like a tiny version of Divine Purpose, I suppose. And you swap it up.
Largely, it's because it had a short cooldown, so it allowed you to reduce the amount of downtime.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a small change, but all right.
You get a bit of free cleave out of Zeal, at least.
It's true.
Any change is welcome at this point, so I'm fine with it.
Well, that's what I was gonna harken back to the other half of the show with like talent choices and changes and how it's been the same spec for a long time. And at least with your tier 20, you saw some change, like you said. So that's not terrible. But I guess moving on forward, we'll give a short shout out to the tier 21 on the horizon, because it's already on the PTR able for testing. So I'm propping up your female blood elf real quick here, Bran. And what do you guys think of the tier 21 look in comparison? The cloaks are broken, chat, but everything else is fine.
I think I like it more than the tier 20 currently. For sure.
It's because of the boots, right?
Oh yeah. The boots are pretty crisp.
They're really big boots. Like they're really, really... I mean, look at how tiny and frail female blood elf looks like, and look how big those boots are.
That's been a common theme recently, though, with plate boots. You know, they've been a lot chunkier, I think, recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, eyebrows greater than steel. Yeah, because they cut through the helmet. Yeah, that's just the model viewer does that. I mean, look at on like when you actually have hair on a character, it cuts through crazy. That's always a thing. That's never
and the
changed.
ears.
Yep, and the ears. Yep. Oh, I always bring this up too as the modeling and the items in the game improve. Is you definitely see there's definitely a real sort of thickness and verticality to a lot of the pieces. Like you have like the stuff on your hips now, and the glove, the armament pieces, and again the stupid boots. They're so big, so it looks nice. The particle effect on your shoulder is kind of broken right now on the PTR build. It just kind of looks like it's just like falling light in like a blocked off pattern there, but.
Well, I mean, as I said, I sort of quite like it, but I'm not keen on the wings on the shoulders. It sort of looks like if you press it down, it'll flush something away. So I'm not. I would rather it went back to the old Libram and Hammer type design. Because
they're wings, but I guess yeah, like a toilet flusher. Yeah, that's funny. So. And I guess this is sort of a broader topic now. So what is the Ret community figuring out now in 7.25 rather, like with builds, talent, legendaries all coming together, sort of leads into the talent combination walkthrough. So I guess Thete, do you want to like bring up the introduction of the Seal of the High Lord and the possibility of running different builds, or is it not good enough to do, or?
Well, I mean, in terms of different combinations, there are far more now. I mean, you would generally want to use for like legendaries, you'd sort of generally want to use the cloak and the belt if you had it. Now it's much more open and fitting around this possibility that everyone has, that we can mix tier set bonuses. And it's not just the raid set bonuses. There are set bonuses that have always existed. For example, the ones that do extra damage against demons you can get from the dungeons, Archway and so on. Right. So people who are fortunate enough or just spam those dungeons enough and deserve it, fair enough, to have those ones can maybe mix it in there, because we've now got 2 legendary rings which are suitable. Cephas's would, in theory, be suitable. Cephas actually can be amazing if you can always use it on cooldown, but it's a bit like we did a fight in Heroic this week, and I can't remember which one it was now, and someone asked, they said to someone, to everyone, don't interrupt, I'm going to get every interrupt, going to use Ceph as a secret. And with our sort of guild, you can tell immediately what happened is someone poached one of their interrupts, and then they finished off a fraction off rank 1. They weren't happy. But we have the same thing. We keep having to shout at people to let, for example, demon hunters interrupt. But so yeah, Ceph as a secret, probably not. But in theory it could be. But you've certainly got Liadrin's Fury Unleashed and Chain of Thrain, which are the standard ones, certainly for single target. The chest is really useful in for anything where there's going to be a significant amount of AoE, except increasingly in the fights of Tomb of Sargeras, even when there is potential for AoE, we've got to keep it in our pants, because apparently things dying is bad. And you can still use the cloak potentially. In fact, the having Blade of Justice deal 3 holy power can potentially help that, and also the fact that you can get Blade, if using Blade of Wrath, that randomly resets, that can make it easier to maintain a high uptime on Whispers of the Nathrezim. So there's ironically, at the point where a lot of people who've been playing for a long time will have all these legendaries available.
Yep.
You've actually got much more choice now. And as I say, depending on what gear you get, sort of depends on which pieces of tier 20 that we get to use, called tier 6, because it's modeled on tier 6. Tier 20 we get to use, as well as that combination of 2 set and 4 set. So there's loads of combinations of gear, which in theory might be quite good, and it just means people who enjoy simming can knock yourself out, because there's a lot to potentially look at there.
So are you finding in your progression so far, and the relearning of Mistress and whatever, and the stuff that you've done so far, Bran, pushing as far as you have, are you actually doing what Thete just said? Are you moving legendaries around? Have you experienced this firsthand?
I mean, I've done some simming, and some are close, but the combination I'm currently running is still the top for single target, and that's my job on Mistress right now. Is just a single target bot, because our AoE is too rampant and inconsistent, so gotta try to help where I can and not have those ads die too early. So, Not yet, but Potentially, as I have more gearing options, I might be able to swap more things around to fit in more legendaries.
You're still running. Are you running the Adrins in the chain then?
Yes.
Belt and ring. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, because the Scarlet Inquisitor's expurgation. Yeah, there's a number of legendaries that were added in like this, and some set bonuses that are sort of the same sort of stacking or over time kind of thing. And I was wondering about if that would be any good, because it takes a minute, right? No, 15 seconds.
Well, no, it'll take a minute to get up to full stacks.
Well, right.
But it will overtake Templar's Verdicts at like half that. But the benefit can potentially be, I mean, we don't really have fights like this in Tomb of Sargeras, so it's not. Right. But, you know, you imagine a situation, say, on Gul'dan, where you need to blow the eyes up really quickly. So you've got like a Beast Lord type thing where it's single target, but then regularly you're going to have ads spawn in. Well, your first Divine Storm is going to wreck them in a situation like that. It's also really useful in Mythic Plus as well. So it's an interesting one, and it's one of those that in theory is useful and hopefully will be at some point. It's just that in Tomb of Sargeras, especially in Mythic, we're largely having to focus on single target, even on some bosses where you could sort of cleave a bit more on Heroic, I think. You know, like Desolate House, which my guild are working on at the moment. Obviously, you know, you can AoE quite a lot of that on Heroic. You sort of got to behave yourself a bit on Mythic.
Right. Well, there's a weird pacing on that sort of fight, and it's funny to see which encounters are just sprinkled in a whole bunch of ads in there, or where they change in Mythic. That it's nowhere near as problematic as Nighthold. Every freaking boss except like one-ish, 1.5, just have ads just sprinkled in there for effect, essentially. And you can tell the design, well, you can tell the design of Nighthold was made over a year ago, back in the beta cycle before the game was even launched, versus Tomb of Sargeras, which has been built with Legion already being out. But again, instead of having ads in every boss fight, you have soaks on every boss fight. So there's always some huge prevalency of one mechanic. This is a Blizzard just can't seem to get away from. But so then I guess in that regard, like Brad, what are you running spec wise then most of the time then? Like what's your talent loadout looking like nowadays?
So you're going to be running Final Verdict. It's just the go-to. It's just the best talent that you can choose there. And then Seal, because I have the tier 20 4-piece in my Adrins. And you sort of, the tier 45 doesn't really matter. I just choose Blinding Light because the AoE sort of interrupt. Well, the reset the spellcast and interrupt for like trash and stuff doesn't really benefit you in most encounters.
It was nerfed, sadly. It does no damage now. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. And then Divine Hammer for any of your cleave, AoE, fight goodness, or Mythic Plus, etc. And or Blade of Wrath for your single target ones. The tier 75 is generally up to you. I'd run Eye for an Eye because it's a physical defensive that you can utilize occasionally. And then for tier 90, you could run Cavalier or Divine Intervention, depending on the encounters. Whichever one if you need the mobility, you can run Cavalier. If you require the shorter cooldown or just the auto bubble, you can take that. And then, of course, you have to stick with Crusade. And that's the go-to build these days for just about everything.
Interesting. You didn't bring up Judgment of Light at all. Do you feel like it's not powerful enough to bring up as a Ret Paladin, or just not worth it enough as a Ret Paladin?
It's not really worth what you're losing.
Okay. Because they fixed that. That was one of your hot fixes recently, is now Judgment of Light. If there's multiple Judgment of Light on the target, it will still reactively proc one each of them per hit that people are doing to it, instead of having like the 1 second global lockout on all of them now. So stacking Judgment of Light does work if you have 3 paladins running it or whatever, but not enough. You're saying not enough for the Ret Paladin to run it.
I don't think you're ever really gonna realistically see 3 Ret Paladins in our raid these days.
Well, wow. Other paladins have Judgment of Light, but okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, unless you have lots of need for wisdom. I mean, come on now, right? Again,
that's true.
Wisdom's the new blessing of might. So, but it is what it is. Is that sort of like the standard, the El Clasico right now? Then, Thete, nothing else to really.
No, I mean, the thing with the Divine Intervention and Cavalier, if you don't need the extra mobility of Cavalier on progress, why wouldn't you take something that might save your life? Because ultimately, you know, when you're progressing, the further into a fight everyone lives, the more you learn, the quicker you can kill stuff anyway. And Judgment of Light, yeah. It's a fun, out of that 3, I would love to take Judgment of Light because it's the most interesting, but in terms of practical gain, yeah, it's not going to be of noticeable use.
Well, I was trying to steer the conversation over to, you know, talking about Execution Sentence or Consecration, because they've been sitting here almost the entire expansion, just kind of sitting here, just sitting here.
Well, Execution Sentence, even though some people might get it to sim a little bit ahead of Final Verdict, it's more difficult gameplay, so you are not likely to, in reality, get it to be as good as Final Verdict. If you're going to have something that is more difficult to use, because with this, it follows the same rules as it costs Holy Power, so it follows the same rules as a Holy Power spender in that to get the best out of it, you need to be doing that damage while the Judgment is active on your target, but it takes between 5 and 6, depending on your haste, seconds to fall and land. So you're sort of having to make sure your Judgment's up on that target several seconds later, which in theory it should be. So you don't want to let it fall in between the cracks. So it's more complicated to use. It's very, very difficult to use perfectly. So why wouldn't you just go for the passive thing that does as much damage and in reality will actually do more? And Consecration, you know how tanks are like. They like moving things away from yellow circles. So the fact that is there static, and also you would need mobs there. You need lots of herds of gophers for that one to be useful, really. You can't discount Consecration. In theory, there are situations where it might be useful. It's just that in practice, not really.
Well, that's I mean, I'm looking at this, and Final Verdict is 20% Templar's Verdict, which is your single target finisher. And then it also gives you 10% on Divine Storm, which is your AoE finisher. So then this is a direct problem with the fact that this buffs your single target and AoE. And if you trade off for Consecration, which of course would do both, if its damage isn't going to be better than just Divine Storming, it just kind of sits here.
I mean, Consecration was useful, for example, on the bats on Tichondrius, because especially if you had some way, like, for example, having a monk, of gathering them up. And if it was your job to actually blow the hell out of the bats, then it saw some service there. But you need one of those niche situations to make it useful.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing with Final Verdict is it completely knackers Justicar's Vengeance, because it doesn't buff that, so that's why you end up with a situation where Justicar's Vengeance per Holy Power spent isn't very useful for damage dealing.
Right. Yeah, Justicar's Vengeance came up. It was awkward during beta. I remember that specifically because you'd run Justicar's Vengeance with Divine Purpose when I was doing testing, and you would always use JV when you had a Divine Purpose proc. But its damage was broken back then, and it was doing like double, if not more, of a Templar's Verdict. It was just totally busted. So that obviously isn't live, but...
I mean, even when it came out, it was still okay to use, but the issue was that we have Ashbringer traits which buff the damage of our Templar's Verdict, but not Justicar's Vengeance. Then you have Final Verdict which buffs Templar's Verdict, but not Justicar's Vengeance. So it's fallen away to the point where they do roughly the same amount of damage, but Justicar's Vengeance costs 5 Holy Power. It's a good solo talent because you can be stunning mobs and use it to heal yourself up, especially if you're low item level and you take tackling on elite mobs. It's really useful for that, and it's one of the things. But in a raiding situation, you could, but you have to be conscious of the fact it's a very expensive heal. Now you're more likely to get more use out of Word of Glory. At least you can heal other people around you. If you don't have to use it that, and you shouldn't have to use it that much.
Okay. Yeah, that was it. It's funny which ones looked so different in beta or so promising in beta, and just because of how everything is sort of, and I bet I was like way more like, doe-eyed back then. And I was like, oh, so many different talent possibilities and combinations, but it still feels like it always gets to this point like halfway through an expansion where you're just like, they're just not good. this is not good, that's not good. This is for like all of these things in here too. So yeah, and you know, all these different changes, the changed execution sentence, the change to the base abilities of certain specs, and they admitted that they removed too many things, like hunters only got their traps back and stuff like that, but there's still some things that are still a little bit unfortunate. And we've already beat Holy Wrath into the ground, so we can move on from that one. How about, I'll toss it back over to you, Bren, since you may have experienced a little bit more. Trinkets in Tomb of Sargeras? Anything you want to bring up about trinket hierarchy or things to look out for Ret Paladins?
Well, what's nice about Tomb over Nighthold is we have a lot more usable trinkets. Because in Nighthold we had conversions.
Conversions, yep.
And then Scorpion Trinket was okay. And then we had Foci, which was, it could be good if you got like the RNG for it. And then in this one we have Infernal Cinders, which acts sort of like the Claw from Scorpion, which is the trinket off the first boss. Except this trinket is extraordinarily good. It's the best trinket in here by far. It's always going to be good, even if you don't have anyone else buffing it. It just does an obscene amount of damage on its own, so you always want to take that. And then we have options for our second trinket with Spectre, Umbral, Moonglaves, or even and Violet Ceaseless Toxins, depending on the fight. So there's a lot more variety, which is really handy. So you got Spectre for if the boss is not going to be moving very much, where you can get the double uses out consistently throughout the entire fight. And then you have the Moonglaves for all your AoE fights. Pretty straightforward. And then Violet is your go-to for everything else. It always lines up with your Crusades, so you're always benefiting from the haste scaling and the damage scaling on the trinket use. So it's probably the one you'll use the most as your second trinket alongside Cinders. And,
does the so going over these kind of things, obviously like the proc damage on the Infernal Cinders, the crit chance will go up. There's probably a break point around so many people that you would benefit the most from this, but in the Crusade window, the fire damage proc is amplified, correct?
Yes.
And the same can be said for Vial, so you would actually only use Vial when you're at a full 15 stacks, right? Or
the thing with Vial, the tick rate also benefits from the haste on Crusade, so it's sort of double dipping there.
Oh, interesting. Have you guys? And have you tested out the Spectre's pulse damage? Does that also go up as well?
Yes.
Okay. Because there are certain
because
trinkets.
It's not a 1 minute cooldown, it doesn't line up all the time, so you sort of have to just kind of use it on cooldown, and it lines up with your second, with every other Crusade.
Right.
You'll get the double tick at the 15 stacks. Doesn't quite line up as neatly with Vial on the 1 minute cooldown, where you'll get it at 15 stacks, and then you'll use it in between, and then you'll get it for the next 15.
Yeah. That's Thete brought that up about, tanks moving things out of your yellow circles on the ground, but that's the same thing that you have to do with Spectre, because if you don't get the boss right back to the same spot when you get the double use out of it, then you'll obviously not get the double explosion. But it's also interesting to always just talk about trinkets with classes that actually have damage amps, offensive or personal, because as a spec that has no damage amps, it's funny to see that a lot of these trinkets you're talking about being good are like just kind of for me. Like they're just kind of like, we thought Infernal Cinders would be great for enhancement because it scaled with our mastery, but it was like, it doesn't, we don't have anything to do anything without. Like Warriors and Ret Paladins and DKs and Demon Hunters all have these things that help and work towards trinkets having different hierarchies. But I'm just like, I'll just take stat sticks, I guess, or convergence. We'll just keep that in there. Even though Engine of Eradication is quite nice, but it does make you play your own mini boss game while you're also doing the boss with the orbs. But anything else about trinkets you want to add in, Thete, or is that pretty much?
Well, like I say, Bran has said there that the trinkets are they're all sort of useful, but they can be situational, like the Spectre. I mean, I can't get the Cinders. It has dropped many times for us in the other split run. And people keep coining it just for fun on Mythic, but I can't get it myself. But I do have a Vial and I have a Spectre, which, because they're both on use as well, using one puts the other on cooldown for a short amount of time. So you have to sort of You know, you start off with Spectre and wait for your stacks to build up to get Vile. But with Spectre, of course, the issue is not just tanks moving it away, but even if they're willing and want to move it back, they can't see your Spectre because it's invisible to everyone else.
Right.
So they're all situational, these things. So Spectre, like Brandon said, is good if the target's going to stay there. Vile is always good, really. The other thing with Vile, of course, is if, like on the Owl on Sister or something like that, you've got a bit of an ad, you can use it on something that's about to die, get it again quickly for the on-use thing there.
Yep.
So they're all, you know, you wouldn't say to any of them, oh, I couldn't use this, even though I wouldn't like to use the Engine of Eradication myself because it's fiddly. But no, they are all actually quite good. It's just some are better than others, and Cinders, surprisingly, is really good even if no one else has it. So you don't even care if other people have it. Like some people in our raid group are asking how many of you guys are going to use Cinders to decide whether they should use it or not.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
we don't worry about that.
Yeah, I think there was some of the specs that are going to use Cinders, I think, had like good group-based like breakpoints. They wanted like a few of them or whatever to bring the crit rate up like that. But I think for the most part, that's good to see, because I know there was quite a lot of interesting grown problems with Nighthold trinkets, because basically it was convergence or stat sticks, because everything else was just like Foci was supposed to be like this raid version of the Anger Boda, but due to the fact that they let the buffs last longer, they also destroyed the RPPM, and they're each like less than 1. So you can go minutes and minutes without any, so you just like to have a agility stat stick on for no reason. So it's neat to see that there are a lot more on-use trinkets, which again are going to be hit or miss depending on your spec, but actually trinkets that do feel like they have some real weight behind them. Because a few of them are mini games, right? Like the Engine of Eradication is literally a mini game. The Cradle of Anguish is the king of padding / ranking trinket for on farm, because you're not gonna use that on progression. That's just risky. So, and then of course the little bit you can get with the other trinkets. So chat was bringing up the Kill Jaden trinket. Did you either of you want to give that a, because that's always like the top simming trinket, but
it's always the top, but it's a legendary. But
Right.
when you take into account the fact it uses up a legendary slot, it's not so good. You know, you're better off using 2 other trinkets. Well, obviously depending on what they are,
Okay.
and 2 of our better legendaries.
Okay. Right. And to confirm on that, because other trinkets do gain the benefit of Crusade window, Kill Jaden's only does more damage if you debuff the target, which Ret does with Judgment, but that doesn't affect anything else. Versus if you have Kill Jaden's Burning Wish like an Arms Warrior and you AoE Colossus Smash and then Burning Wish, that actually affects it, or Nemesis with Demon Hunter. So yeah.
The thing to watch out for is Cradle, actually, because you know when people do sim, it can sometimes sim because of that thing where you could potentially lose your stacks if you take a load of damage.
Right.
So people always have to watch out on that one. The sims will assume you're going to stay on 100% health throughout the fight.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, it's a scary trinket, because it actually is very powerful when you look at it, but if it ever falls off, it just like almost destroys the usefulness due to the restack period, and it won't restack until you're above 80% health, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why it's a farm trinket, because you'll be a lot more consistent on farm with that kind of stuff. But
well, quickly speaking of that little trap with the cradle there,
yeah,
the reset cooldown on Vile is a little fiddly too, because if you do that, you do run the chance of having it not line up with your Crusades anymore, your 15 stacks anyway. So it's a little, you'd have to play with that a little to maybe optimize it, but generally you might want to try to avoid that to get the consistency.
Okay. So it might be better to just use it with Crusade on cooldown, sort of pairing, then try to juggle it around.
Maximize, uses.
Right. Fair enough. Well, we'll jump into the end tail of the show here, the nitty-gritty section with the chat Q&A and whatnot. I have, of course, a whole slew of questions here that the guests can see. We'll bring up a couple of them, but if you have questions in chat, now you can fill chat with them if you'd like, and we can sort of go back and forth on that one for the last little bit of the show. But I guess the first one I'm going to bring up, we kind of brought up a lot of these earlier in the show. We shout out to the fellow raiders dying for Retribution. We talked about the Shield of Vengeance shenanigans, stand-in bad for DPS. So I guess the one I'll open you guys up with here is that we talked about it a little bit earlier, but where do you feel that the main focus of a Retribution Paladin should be now in Legion? Because there are 5 sort of types of damage in World of Warcraft: single target, burst single target, cleave, burst AoE in that regard, or just AoEing for long periods of time, like Mistress kind of nonsense, or even Desolate Host on Mythic. Those ads are up for quite a while. That's just constant AoE. So where do you feel that Ret fits? Like, what is your strong point, or what is your weak point on that one? Like, Brian, what do you, from your perspective?
Just because of how Crusade is, our burst AoE, or just sort of burst single target to a degree, is where our strength lies. But our sustain outside of that isn't quite up to what every other class is right now. But, you know, as you said, it's Tomb of Sargeras, so we do have our uses there with our raid utility, wisdom, our soaks, bops, whatnot. Mm-hmm. That does have its usage, and I think that's where we are right now.
Okay.
More of a utility DPS.
Well, that's always been that kit, that toolbox, even though they slimmed it down. Again, no sacrifice, etc. But and you have no actual DR, so you can immune things, but you can't like DR soak stuff or something like that, because you will explode like anyone else would without good DR. So, I mean, anything to add? What do you think? Like the
No, I mean, I think that's exactly right. Crusade is one of those things that means that our ability to wreck things at key times should be our main focus, such as the reflections on Kill Jade and things like that. Crusade lines up nicely for that. That sort of thing is where we're at, and then little bits of utility. But you know, at the moment, that is Bop. Blessing of Freedom has at various points in Legion. Okay, I suppose on like scenarios, for example, you could use Blessing of Freedom to help people soak up the brambles and stuff. But yeah, I think that's where we're at, and I actually wouldn't mind a few more tools. I don't mind if we were a utility-based spec, a support class. I think that would be quite good for the Paladins.
Yeah, that's been brought up before, and that's like the whole Bard side of things. Or, you know, I started playing Enhancement and Breeding Crusade when I basically just totem twisted. I brought Bloodlust and Wind Fury and Strength of Earth and Grace of Air totems for my group, right? Like you totem twist Wind Fury down for the buff, and then put down Grace of Air. Like that was a DPS rotational thing, is putting a totem down for a short buff, and then changing it to the passive one while the short buff is on. But I think that's definitely been a way that they've, over time, there's no hybrid tax anymore, apparently. And talking to you, you know, in the next question I was going to bring up, obviously it seems like there's something hybrid-y problem there, but that's the next thing I'll bring up was my question, but it was brought up in chat too. Retributives asks, how do you justify, or how do I justify, or you, not benching your bottom DPS Rets for Mythic? Because that's a very case-by-case basis, because your DPS, obviously, in your guild is not Warcraft logs.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, it's effective DPS, isn't it? It's not always over, because some people pad. But at the end of the day, if they are actually your bottom effective DPS, then you do bench them. I would expect to be benched if I was no use in a fight. We're not bottom of DPS, like, or we shouldn't be within our guilds. So, you know, we shouldn't be immune to the bench. We can't hide behind Blessing of Wisdom. You know, it's nice, but it's not a reason to bring us and do bugger all damage. We are a DPS class, and we should be able to do damage. And if we can't do damage, we should be benched.
I feel like that's only important for any fight that requires some sort of stiff DPS check. Because for the most part, as far as Mythic rating goes, if your people are doing mechanics, the boss will die. So if you're a player that does your mechanics properly and you do them well, and you sacrifice whatever DPS you're doing to make sure the mechanics are being done, the boss will die. And that's just how it goes. So if you're performing well for your spec and your class, then it's all up to mechanics at that point. You could be rank 1 in everything, but if you ignore the mechanics, you should be benched.
Yeah. Well, that's a big like stamp, right? Big red old stamp across. I want to make like my first meme and make like one of those like like vacation posters, kind of Fallout style, where it says "Welcome to the Tomb of Sargeras," and it just has like a Ret Paladin standing in a meteor, or a mage ice blocked inside of a fissure, or a rogue standing inside of a beam, like whatever, right? Like, because all you do is soak, and that's the big thing, is that, like, take the enrage timer that was put in on Kill Jaden for heroic. Didn't really matter even when we first killed it. It matters for mythic apparently because of timings, which that's a whole other ball of wax there. But a lot of the fights don't seem like they have enrage timers that require everyone to do baller 1.4 million arms warrior DPS right now. But if you don't kill the right Murlocs, or don't handle the fragments on to Divine Inquisition, then you don't kill the fight, right? So
yeah.
I mean, when we were doing Sisters, our like main knight of progress on it was completely scuppered because the melee, instead of moving across the phase, were moving across it, finding themselves slightly out of melee range as the tanks went through, and were skirting it and massively. We were getting like 9-10 stacks and so on. It kept wiping us. And you know, and like Brand says, that's all you have to do those mechanics. You know, you're ranking. If you want to do ranking, that should be for farm. And I don't mean farm on a particular boss. I mean farm when the whole instance is cleared. Because if you mess about and wipe people even on what is a farm boss, that's less progress time for the one coming up.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's definitely breaking down the echelons of what is farm. Is farm I've killed the boss 3 times, or is farm I've killed the instance in entirety and we just killed the final boss, right? Like there's a definite.
I would say farm is when you've got your world ranks safe.
Right.
Yeah, I would say so too. Because anytime you spend wiping on a boss that's on farm, then you're not actually spending that time progressing, as they just said. So yeah, that's
right.
What I would say as well.
Yeah. Now, not everyone in the community thinks that, though, and it doesn't get propagated out there very much in that regard and those kind of things. So, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, Ret wasn't looking very strong on the PTR. What was or is the reason to run Ret, especially raiding and mythic? Curious why one wouldn't swap. Well, that brings up the whole swap argument, and my thought is that not everyone has other characters to play, and they've been playing like one the whole time. So unless you're raiding like in the top 10 to 20-ish guilds, you don't need to worry about that. Am I wrong?
Well, I have a Retribution Paladin. It's what I play well. I am not going to play another spec as well as I play this, and I don't want to. It's a game. Obviously, that's a wrong attitude to have if I was in a guild going for top 50, but I'm not.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's one of those weird points that sort of ekes out there, right? When they see what Method or Exorcist or anyone in that regard, or the old past guilds when they were pushing, and like I think back to things like Spine of Deathwing, like, oh, you need 11 arcane mages to be Spine of Deathwing. Well, I guess everyone's playing arcane mage now. Like, that won't matter for you when you get there. Are you raiding 16 hours a day, 7 days a week when raids come out? If no, then play what you want to play. So it's more about doing what you do well, because if you just suddenly change your main to something you haven't played before because it's quote unquote better, you're not going to have the same muscle memory on that class. So, yep. We'll have to wait and see. Here's a really good question. What are your thoughts on pineapple on pizza? Brand, go.
Oh, it's delicious. I mean, I grew up in the tropics. So I grew up with pineapples everywhere, so it's just sort of normal for me at this point.
Thete, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts. I'm a massive Gordon Ramsay fan, but he's got this one totally wrong. Pineapple is fantastic on a pizza. In fact, you know, pineapple and pepperami are one of my favorite topics.
Who are my guests? What is this show anymore? I don't even know where I am. I've lost control already, I think.
Completely derailed.
Wait, Bran eats his pizza with ketchup and mustard?
That is slightly taken out of context.
I mean, see, Like I can go with a whole bunch of pizza toppings, but I don't know if you're doing that. Those are hamburger and hot dog toppings, sir. You be careful. Be careful with that one. But the best pizza topping is gnomes. Thete, comments?
I don't want to eat them. I might catch some ghastly disease. You know, they need to be incinerated for safety.
They do have a tendency to become lepers. So
yeah,
you
exactly.
may be right.
That's true. That's true. If there was one thing you wish you could keep from Legion going to the next expansion, what would it be?
Wake of Ashes.
Oh yeah, definitely Wake of Ashes. That's a great one.
There we go. That was pretty straightforward. What Ashbringer skin are you using, Brad? What's up? What are you using? What's your favorite?
I'm using the Balance of Power one, the flamey blue sword. Kind of liking that one. Looks a little bit nicer with the set that I'm running.
What about you, Thete?
There's a difference between my favorite and what I'm using. My favorite is simply the one you got for getting all the traits. It's on the second tier. You know, so it's not anything fancy. I'm not actually using any of the Ashbringer skins. I'm using the vanilla Grand Marshal double-handed mace skin in my vanilla PvP transmog at the moment.
I think I saw that on the. Hold on, is that on your
yes,
armory?
you would see it. It would be on my armory. That's what I'm using at the moment.
Hang on, we gotta open this for chat. I think we need to see this. Let me see here. Yep, there it is. Oh, you have on the. You have on the Admiral's hat too, it looks like.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh,
it's a captain's hat actually. It's captain's hat. Yeah. Which is actually better. Fewer frills, not as ostentatious.
All right. Well, that's fair. That hammer though, like the nostalgia is real, but that mace, Blizzard has a weird sizing problem with two-handed maces. I don't understand it. They're always way too small.
It's way too small. Did you see what Uther looks like in the PTR in the order hall? There was a bit of a bug where his hammer was like 100 feet long. I don't know whether it's been fixed yet or not, but yeah, when I was streaming the PTR last weekend, someone had noticed it beforehand and put it in the Ret Discord. Yeah, Uther's hammer had grown out of proportion somewhat, so there was certainly nothing small about that.
Oh, chat getting on you. You were wearing the Karabor seal in the armory because you just ran Black Temple, I guess. What's y'all being?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to go to Black Temple to get some screenshots for a video I was going to do on the Black Temple time walking.
Yeah,
I've been caught out.
In Black Temple time walking, it's Tuesday. The next whole week is Black Temple time walking, so get hyped or not for that. We'll have to see if it gets I hope it comes out and there's like not hot fixes right after the point, like nerfs all these abilities. People can't do things because like all Black Temple mechanics too strong. We'll see. We'll definitely see. And then we can close on this one then. What's the best way to bring Rets up to middle of the pack DPS for single target? Because if you aren't aware, chat, viewers, listeners, etc., you want to be in the middle. Because if you're on the bottom, it sucks. If you're on the top, you go get nerfed. You want to be right there in that middle bracket. You want to be right there in the middle. So that's where you want to be, and then you're good to go. But I don't know. We went over this a little bit earlier, but what do you think? Anything specific to bring Rets up to the middle of the pack kind of thing for a single target? Brian, what do you think?
If they did do something with Crusade and they toned it down, they would have to bring up the damage on all the other abilities just so our consistency is there. Right. And that would also sort of remove sort of our identity at the moment of being a heavy priority target burst within our Crusade window. I mean, they could just cheat and give us a big aura buff, but that wouldn't be very interesting.
Right. What do you think, Thete?
Well, given that it's not like our AoE is smashing at the top either, it's much better, I would just bring Mastery into the fold. I would increase the amount, the effect of our Mastery.
Okay. So to make the core functionality of that judgment window actually mean something. Okay.
Certainly mean more, yeah.
Right. Okay. That is a big part of the rotation, is that window. But, like, it doesn't do much now. Like, it should. So, okay. Oh gosh, that's an old one. Tyrion or Tyrellian, etc. Your leap. Remember that talent you had in beta?
Tyrellian's might, yeah.
Tyrellian's
well, it was Lothar's might to begin with,
Oh.
and someone pointed out Lothar's a warrior.
Well, but yeah. That's fair. That is fair. But I think that's about everything. We'll sort of wrap this up with if you have any shout-outs or words of wisdom for your fellow paladins out there. Bran, you want to lead us in here if you have anything you want to close on?
I just gotta shout out all my pals out in the Ret Discord. We're always hanging out, answering questions. Weasel, Muffin, Guppin, the boys. Yeah, I don't know. Not too much. Everyone knows who they are.
Sounds good. Short and sweet. Thete, how about you?
Yeah, I'll just give a shout out to my guild mates who probably shouldn't be listening to this because they're supposed to be on Desolate Host at the moment, embarrassing themselves. And guilds past and present. And I've noticed some people from Echoes in here as well. So give a shout out to those guys as well. I've seen Crazy and a Word Up at the very least in there. And alongside all the guys from Discord that we talked about at the beginning that make the Ret community actually, some people think some communities are better than others. I think the Ret community is actually pretty good now that we've got the Discord, and it feels better than I think it ever has done.
Well, awesome. Awesome. I'm going to hit this little button over here that means we get to close the show out, and there it is. So thank you all tuning in for tuning in to episode number 147 of Final Boss TV. I appreciate everyone tuning in, of course, and listening online. Again, you can listen to the show on Stitcher, iTunes, or Google Play Music, or of course on the VODs are all chopped up and put up all pretty with bookmarks on YouTube as well. You can go check those out. So again, around the table, one more time, there's Thete. You can go check him out on his YouTube at Warlord Thete. Now, Warlord is a warrior title. You want to talk to that real quick? What's that? Oh, man.
It's just back from Dungeons and Dragons. Everything about my paladin evolved 30 years ago from Dungeons and Dragons. It was just the title and name of my paladin when I was not quite a teenager, which is quite a long time ago. I am quite old. Just to explain that, I turned 30 during Anchorage.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time on the show today, sir, and all you're doing with the Paladins. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure having you on today. Thank you very much. And then there's Bran over there. You can go bother him on his Twitch stream at Branderp, no S, with an underscore. And
yes, that is correct.
You can go throw out the wheelchair emotes over there and keep going for the future.
Please no.
But thanks for being on the show today, sir. It was a pleasure. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
But that's going to be it for the show today. Next week, we're on the Paladin train just because of how things have worked out. So we have Protection Paladin next week, followed by either Enhancement Shaman or Mistweaver Monk, and then the other, and then we'll end with Brewmaster Monk. Due to the tumultuous, awkward nature that they have, they'll wrap us up with the first passive Legion shows and talk about S+ tier nonsense tanks and things like that in the future. But then we'll have a little bit of a break after that in the future, a couple of weeks from now, of course, and then we'll start the second passive Legion interview shows, and those are going to be interesting because I'm going to do every single spec as one show. So you've been asking for a Frostmage show or a Subtlety Rogue show or a Beast Mastery Hunter show. Hopefully I can find enough guests to do that. But every single spec, especially the ones we haven't talked about since launch, Rogues, Mage, Hunter, Warlock, etc., those are coming up first. Each individual. And that's on the horizon there. So check out the YouTube channel if you've missed past shows. Check out the channel guide if you're looking for all the links to all the different Discord channels or any of the resources here in there on the channel. But thank you very much for watching today or listening. Trusting your seal of artifact power, because you definitely want artifact power right now, right? It's so good. Well, it's good to be done. I'm gonna hit 10 concordance soon or something ridiculous. But have a great week, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. And until next week, bye. Bye. Wave bye, nice people. Wave bye. Wave bye. Wave. There we go. Yeah. There.